Beyond the Wild.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We got the full crew. Ooh, Mr. Raycroft is even going rally cap, hat backwards. Oh, you got to change it back now, Mark.
That was funny because I was just doing it for you guys, but the sound of me turning the hat activated the video. There we go.
Sweet. There it is.
Yeah.
How are things in Canada besides hectic and busy?
Things are beautiful. It's just the end of fall color season. We arrived back from Newfoundland a week ago, and usually we miss color because of that month away in October. And this year it hung on. We were delighted to see lots of reds and yellows. And over the past week, the wind has knocked a lot of it down, but that's been really nice for some photo opportunities closer to home. So yeah, it's been great.
Excellent.
How about
Jason,
you
how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We've just been working and trying to get ready. We're getting ready to do our Churchill trip here in another about a week, and trying to get some edits done before I go on that. And the weather's awesome right now. I mean, it's like we got a little cheat, and we didn't get a ton of fall during fall, but now we're getting the fall weather. So it's been mid 60s and getting down into the 40s and 30s at night, and just love this time of year. I love the cooler temps. So.
Yeah, that's us getting good temps overnight, but during the day it's been 70.
Oh, wow.
So that is not good.
No, it's not. Matter of fact, looking at the Churchill forecast, they still don't really have snow. So it's kind of wild, very mild year up there for them. And bears have been good apparently, but the snow just hasn't come yet. There's supposed to be some storms rolling in this weekend and starting to, so over the next few days. And then the 10-day forecast shows lots of, not lots of snow, but snow pretty much every day.
So if you haven't seen it, go check out Joe Sobolewski's page. He had a post today. So there's a polar bear mural on the back of the polar bear jail near the airport in Churchill. And Joe got a bear walking right underneath the polar bear mural. And it looks like somebody faked a backdrop. But if you know where it is, you know exactly what it is. And it's an amazing shot. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah. Like you couldn't ask for, like with those murals, you couldn't ask for a better scenario. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure it's AI, but just kidding, Joe. Just kidding. Yeah. Anything I see anymore, I have to question. If it's a video about some doorbell thing or something that looks crazy, it's like, it's AI.
That's honestly was my first thought when I saw it, and then I saw who took it. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, we know he wouldn't be pulling that for sure. But
yeah. So tonight, I'm going to cover bear camp and just kind of give you a breakdown of how that went, and then maybe even a couple pro tips along the way with or from bear camp that just came about. I just sprung that on these guys, so it isn't anything that was scripted, but or that we talked about. It's just a couple things that I noticed that I do that I thought we just really haven't talked about. And I think all of us do it, but we, when we're paying attention to posture and things like that. But Mark, do you want to take the lead on this one? Since we're
my mind's spinning on the
covering our trip.
Yeah, I thought one that quickly. I was a little like, okay, what will it be? But we came up with one in Newfoundland that I have something to share.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I missed out on this trip, and what I would have loved to have done it most of all to have had the time with you two and have the field time, and so can't wait to hear. And this is the funny thing. I mean, it's been a wonderful, amazing autumn for myself. And I know Jason said some things, and Ron has not had the ideal autumn, unfortunately, to make an understatement of that. But it would have been nice to be with the guys, and we haven't connected a whole lot. We touch and go on things, we message, and we do some episodes, and the guys have been great, holding the fort some for me in some of my absence too. So that's always appreciated. Thank you, guys. And but yeah, I can't wait to hear what you two got up to. And my imagination runs wild. And as far as the fun, and then how the week was, we haven't had a chance to really chat about it. So this is my first time hearing about the fishing bear trip that Ron and Jason did in the late summer, and can't wait to hear the specific details. It was the first, I think, serious time in the field with the 1 to 300 that we've touched on recently for Canon on the podcast. But most importantly, just can't wait to hear the details, how the week went, the ups and downs, challenges, and fun you guys had. So yeah, how was it?
It was fun.
There we go.
No, I'm just kidding.
Join us next week.
It was a good trip. I had some really high expectations, and then we got some reports on how the weather was prior to us getting there. The group that was there before us just got blasted with wind, and literally tents torn down, and they were replacing tents as we arrived, or they replaced tents after we arrived because they flew in with some of the group. And yeah, literally their camp was completely flattened. And so when we got there, I wasn't sure what to expect. And as it turns out, apparently it's Jason, because the weather was perfect every day. It was fantastic. I don't know, we had a couple little spits of rain, but other than that, we couldn't ask for any better.
Even got a pretty epic photo of Ron and I underneath a rainbow.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to revisit that.
I think that was, whatever rumors you've heard, they're true, and they're probably worse.
I don't think we need to put that out in the world.
Well, I'm glad you guys had an amazing time, and in hindsight, I'm glad we're doing a different trip together.
Yeah, right.
Sleeping
but there was some gorgeous mornings.
Pardon?
Yeah. Sorry, Mark. There's a little bit of a lag tonight, but yeah, there was some gorgeous mornings, and just the whole trip the weather-wise, it was pretty incredible, like Ron alluded to. So I don't know how we got so lucky to have another great window of weather, but we'll take it for sure. The fish run was a little different. I don't know if we want to get into that right away, but the fish run was a little different from my first trip, and talked a little bit about that on some other things, like how sometimes that's okay, right? It just makes for a different opportunity. When we were talking to Adam and Kate just recently, we talked a little bit about how those runs can be different, and that just brings different opportunities, different types of photos, different styles of photos. And I think it's never an issue. You just go, choose your dates and go, and you just take what Mother Nature gives you, Yeah. And there's different styles of photos to be had regardless of what's going on. So
the best video clip I had was with a cell phone from camp, and there was this patch of alders right behind camp, and there was bear beds all throughout. There was trails going in, and they were bedding in those alders to shade up, during the heat of the day or whatever. Which coincidentally was where we went to the restroom. So you had to take bear spray with you when you headed out. But these bears just walked right by camp. I got up early in the morning to go have a cup of coffee, and there was bears walking basically just right alongside the fence at camp, just outside the tents, and they headed up this ridge, and I rushed back in, grabbed my phone, um, just so I could video them going up the hill because there was some amazing light back behind the camp. And sure enough, these two bears just walked straight into that light. So they were backlit, and yes, bare butts walking away, but they did turn and give a couple good looks on the way over the hill, and it was a pretty cool video actually. Um, that was my first flight in a float plane, by the way, going in,
Mm.
and it was much like a hot air balloon. You really don't feel yourself leave the water.
Mm-mm.
It's like a hot air balloon. You don't feel yourself leave the ground, but those float planes are pretty smooth. And granted, we were blessed with uh, really calm days when we flew in and flew out, but it was pretty amazing. Those guys are good at what they do, of course, but it was a smooth takeoff and landing on those things, which is good because there's about 1,000 takeoffs and landings every day up there. It's insane, the number of planes.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a couple of folks on the trip, and I didn't know that was you, Ron, but one of the guys that flew in with us had not been on a float plane ever and was really nervous. And, I've been on a few float planes now, and a couple of them with pretty bumpy rides. And, those small planes, how it is, they're all kind of bumpy. It's just a small plane. They're a little bumpy. But for the trips I've been on, it was really smooth. And we got to camp, and he made a comment about, we're like, wow, that was actually a really smooth flight. Kelly and I and him were on that flight. And he's like, really? I was holding on, gripping tight as could be. I was petrified. I was freaking out. I was like, oh, that was smooth. That was nothing, like. So I guess it's all relative, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought so too. Those float planes are actually cool. They're fun to ride, to fly on. It's crazy how smooth they take off and how smooth they land. You really don't. It's just almost just like butter. And those pilots are just incredible, right?
We flew in and out in Beaver. Mark, when you went, I know we're gonna get to this, but when you guys went up for muskox, did you fly in an otter and take everybody?
That trip was an otter. Yeah, yeah. It's a little bigger than beaver, but
Okay,
flown on a beaver many times.
a
But
little
love
bit
that
bigger.
plane. But yeah, an otter. So it's still, I think, de Havilland plane. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
bigger
Yep.
passenger plane, but maybe 1.5 times the size. Guessing.
Seating wise, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We could take the pilot, his co-pilot up front, and then there was 6 people in chairs, and then there was still, that was only half the space, and there was all kinds of baggage and supplies going to camp. So there was a lot of space in the plane. That was all netted in, and tied in next to the seats, and yeah, we did 2 flights for that, just for the supplies and guests and everything. But yeah, it was super smooth, fun to do, and what a
Mm-hmm.
great way to see the country from the air, but at that low
It is.
perspective. You can scan for animals, and who knows what you see, and it's an appreciation of where you're going as you get in from coming in from the air.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy that.
Awesome.
So those watching on YouTube would have seen Ron's video. Just throwing that out there. Listen to us on audio platforms, but as we talk about content that's on the YouTube channel, so we encourage you to watch that when time permits. So, Jason, you were saying that the strategies photographically with the different, what was happening differently this year than when you were there 2 years ago. How did you approach it to make different images, or what were the elements that made you think differently with your camera, and what you would come away with?
Yeah. So the first trip that I went on a couple years ago, we had a situation where the water levels were lower and the fish had done a big run right when we arrived. and they were all piled up down at the confluence, and so the fish couldn't get up the creek. So that situation meant all the bears were coming down and, you know, gathering at the confluence and all gathering in one big area all together. So it led to more, you know, disputes and more diving in the water for fish, and not really necessarily seeing the fish out of the water. But, you know, when they'd catch one, they'd bring it up and shake it. And there was more fish timing wise that just had eggs in them. So there was more eggs, you know, flying around and stuff, which always makes for a fun shot. You know, that was probably the biggest difference this trip. The fish had already ran, the water levels were higher, and we were on the tail end of a previous big run, and the fish had started to kind of die already. There was lots of zombie fish. But when they're up the creek, you get a lot more of the fish with their backs out of the water in the shallow areas, and the bears chasing them. So a lot more opportunity for that low angle, you know, fish out of the water, bears chasing them. So you see the fish and the bear. It's just a different perspective. Not a lot of the fish. I don't remember. I don't think I saw any fish that dropped eggs when the bear caught them. May have happened, but it was so infrequent that I didn't even notice it. And none of my photos have it in it. So, you know, it was just different all the way around that way. And there's a lot of it's just timing of the runs and when they come and what the water levels are. And, you know, nobody can control that. And it's just a matter of, you know, when your time is when you're there and the time you're there and what's going on. So again, I wasn't disappointed. I think the reason Ron had his hopes up is because of the previous trip and what we kind of expected. But then just the way things worked out, I still felt like I got some unique images and things that I hadn't got before. But we definitely didn't get that level of, you know, congregated bears all in one area. It was more, there were a couple areas where the bears were hanging out, but they were being pretty transient, and they were kind of just wandering around, coming through that area. You know, you'd get a bear come in and fish for a minute, then wander off. Another bear come in and fish and wander off. And there's a couple bears that were kind of hanging out in that area, but they'd all wander around. So we were doing a little more searching for bears instead of just being there photographing them. So,
Yeah, for me, it obviously it was the first time I'd been in that area. But I did have expectations based on what you guys had gotten the previous year, and it was a little bit disappointing not to get some of that behavior. But at the same time, I think we had opportunity to get some behavior that you guys didn't the year before too, just based on where we were, and obviously get to some different areas where you guys were a lot closer to camp. Um, we had the opportunity to go up a different drainage and had some tremendous backdrops, and then had the opportunity to go shoot down off a bluff and see some bears that were actively fishing, just see them from a different angle. So I think, based on what I saw of you guys' stuff last year, was all kind of in your face and a lot of a lot more motion and action than what we got there,
right.
because like you said, there were the fish were on the tail end of their lifespan and were not swimming super aggressively. So
Right.
watching those bears just kind of go along and pick and choose and pick up and put down, and or pick up and haul one up in the brush.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit different than what I expected, but we did get little pieces of that as well. So it was still pretty fun in my opinion.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed overall for sure. I mean, it was a great trip, and I'm learning the more I do this stuff to just kind of accept what we're given and make the most of it, for sure. We always have expectations. I would have hoped that it would have been more like our first trip as far as the action and the amount of bears in one area and all that stuff. But in all fairness, I feel like I got some really cool stuff that I wouldn't have got if they were down at the other area.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that's a good point. The stuff that was up on the tundra was stuff that we didn't get the last time. They just weren't up there. And then some of those wider angle shots with the backdrops were things that we didn't get the first time either, So there's a lot of different opportunities, and I think it made for a really good trip. And we had a really good group of folks with us too. You know,
Mhm.
we had actually had Kelton on our trip. He was our camp host, and he was, he's the one that won the bear trip a couple years ago, or last year actually. He won the bear trip, and then loved it so much in that, and they made him part of the team. So he was there working with us and got to meet him and spend time with him and harass him a little bit. He'll know what that means if he's listening, but um, we may have had some fun conversations about some astro stuff, and
There was some
he's very passionate about that, which I love. It's awesome. He's a heck of an astrophotographer. But
there was some tinfoil hat conversations about the moon landing and things
yeah,
like that.
so apparently somebody that's really into astro stuff doesn't take lightly to some of those insinuations. But well, and you know me, once I find a button, I mean, I can't not push it. So when I'm sitting there having this conversation, and I'm kind of getting him, he wasn't fired up by any means. I don't want anybody to mislead, but he was just kind of, he couldn't believe it. And he kept like saying, and I'm over there, and Ron and Kelly are both over there, like just shaking their heads. Like they finally had to be like, Kelton, he's messing with you, man. That was fun. We had a really good time. Camp was great. Scott and Jackie were awesome. We had a great time, with them. The bears were great. Everything was good about it. The weather was awesome. It's hard to beat a camp like that.
So based on what you're talking about, the
Oh,
difference.
so sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't think I fully answered your question. In all fairness, strategy wise, for me, I decided I was going to, instead of looking for those really tight photos like Ron alluded to, I wanted to get low, and we had an opportunity because of where the bears were to get on a sandbar or a gravel bar that was literally in the river, which gave us a really unique perspective of the bears as they ran towards you, as the fish were, running from them. So I got quite a few photos of the low angle right at water level of the bears chasing fish and stuff, which I thought was really cool. And I had a shot in mind that I was trying really hard to get, and it never came to pass, but it was really fun to try. And I don't even know if it's possible, honestly. I mean, the bear and the fish have to be far enough away that you could still get both the fish and the bear in focus, even shooting at higher aperture, and still, be able to crop enough to have a decent image. And those variables coming together. What I wanted was the fish coming out of the water towards me head on with the bear right behind it chasing it. I just had that in my mind. I thought it would be a really cool photo. And we got some cool stuff where you can see the fish out of the water, bear chasing it, but not coming right at us at that low angle. So
I
that
got it.
shot never happened for me. Ron probably got it, I'm sure. But yeah.
Came pretty close,
Yeah.
but the bear was too close, and the fish was just a little bit out. But
Which I still think that makes a cool photo with the fish in focus and the bear a little bit blurry. I think that even can make a little bit of an artsy type photo. And I got a couple of those that, the bears weren't coming right behind them. But yeah, I
mhm.
really enjoyed what I got. I don't know. I think bear camp's just different every year, and you just got to know that going in. So
Yeah, totally. Every day is different. That's the joy of wildlife photography, right? The weather, the animals, the conditions. So every year is likely to be different too. So that's cool. Speaking of that, just a quick shout out. A good friend of mine, Barb Callender, she has an amazing shot like you're describing, with a salmon coming out of the water straight toward the camera, and a wolf right behind it, about with pop about to catch it.
oh
And
wow.
the salmon had the expression of "Got to get out of here." So that was really unique opportunity.
Hmm.
So that would be, I could see why that would be something you guys would look for sure. That would.
Right. Yeah.
And Ron, I hope you got it, man. You got it. What I was wondering, just with your description, when you leave bear camp and like this year compared to last time, how far are you hiking? Does the group go from bear camp on a day? Are you gone all day? Is it several miles? Is it a mile? Does it vary considerably depending on obviously the water levels of salmon and bears? What was that like this year?
So when we flew in, there were bears right on I guess, the river right below camp. And so I thought that's where we'd be spending a lot of time, but water levels were different. And like Jason had alluded to earlier, the fish had already run upstream, and water levels were a little bit higher due to the rains that, that week before that we got there. There was a lot of rain, so the river was fairly high. And one question that we had was weren't even sure really that we'd be able to cross it. Um, First day, levels were high and it was running pretty fast. And there was a couple guys that, well, one did kind of get his feet taken out from underneath him a little bit. We got a hold of him, and then, just slow roll, and everybody kind of partnered up from that point and helped each other across, or broke current for somebody that was walking beside him, and we just kind of took turns doing that. But then once we got across, we did cross a pretty fair chunk of tundra on our way up to the locations where the bears were kind of hanging out that Jason was talking about. There was this little, it wasn't really a bluff; it was kind of a dirt bank, and just below that dirt bank was the sandbar, the gravel bar that Jason discussed. And so we pretty much walked out there every day, and then just kind of worked up and downstream from there, depending on where the bears were and where the action was. Um, but yeah, the walking varied daily. I mean, it could be anywhere from a mile out and then a mile back to, I think, the furthest we probably went was about 6.5 in a day.
Yeah, I think that one day that we went up high, we were about 6 miles total, roughly. So
Yeah, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, you're not doing that all in one chunk. You're walking in waders, which isn't the preferred hiking boot, but at the same time, it it was fairly easy walking. It was all pretty much flat, and you know we didn't do huge chunks at a time. It was kind of slow rolling.
even though you're on the tundra, you are walking on bear trails that are really heavily used, and so it's not even that bad of walking. It's not like it's the spongy sink and all that. It's pretty packed down. So it wasn't terrible, honestly. So anybody that's looking to do the trip, it's you just need to be able to physically handle walking, up to 6-7 miles a day. But most of the time, you're not going to be doing that. You're going to be doing, like Ron said, 2 to 3 miles a day, probably in most cases. So, and it's pretty easy walking. Other than the waders, they are not the ideal hiking boot for sure. So,
I had broken my foot just prior to us going, and the doctor wanted me in a boot, and I told him I couldn't do it. He said, "What do you mean? What do you mean you can't do it?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Alaska, and I'm going to be in waders and can't do the whole boot thing." So I just kind of suffered the consequences, and I bought a pair of boots that I thought would have a little bit more support on the way up there, uh, wading boots, and they worked out fine. I would not say they were supportive, but they worked out okay.
yeah.
But
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe you walked around all week with a broken foot, but you didn't even
yeah,
complain much either.
I'm I'm paying for it now because I
I'm sure,
did not heal, and it's
bothering you. Yeah.
still feeling that. But
Hmm.
it was just a little chip fracture, evulsion fracture, and it just floats around and cuts through tissue, and as it floats, it's just an irritant. But yeah, it was not fun for the most part.
Something like that, you'll probably have to be off your foot for quite a while for it to settle and heal, right? Yeah, that's challenging.
Yeah, you're supposed to be, but I wasn't going to miss the trip for sure. I didn't. I didn't want to, not go due to that. It was tolerable, and you do things all your life that are uncomfortable, but it's worth it.
It's very true.
Some sayings come to mind, but
But
it's
Mark,
not
you mentioned it.
those words. But sorry.
I just was going to more or transition into the 1 to 300 a little bit. You mentioned it early on, and that 100 to 300 ended up just being like the perfect lens for this type of trip. And that's another difference. The first time I went, I had my 400, and I was shooting it with the 1.4 on it. Then I had my 70 to 200, and I really didn't use my 70 to 200 a ton. And I shot the 1 to 400 without the 1.4 a lot. But this trip, I had the 100 to 300 with the 1.4 on it, which gave me that 140 to 420, and it was just the perfect range. And it was awesome to have that zoom capability to be able to go tight when you need to, but as they run in towards you, you can zoom out as you're shooting, which was for me, it was a huge difference in how many shots I was able to get and the different shots that I was able to get because of the extra shots I got as I zoomed out. Whereas I'd have been done shooting once they filled the frame at 400, basically, I had another, 20, 30 feet basically to that I could shoot and still get images. So that was a game changer. That lens has proved to be quite the tool, from my experience so far. But
Agreed.
what'd you think, Ron? I know you were shooting it too. There's a couple times we were laying on the sandbar together, and Ron looked at me and said, "You shooting photos or video?" I'm like, "Come on, what do you think?" And I said, "I'm doing photos." He's like, "Okay, I'll keep doing some video." I'm like, "All right, well, just let me know if you want me to switch." But
Yeah, I was surprised at how often I was under 300 millimeters.
yeah,
Even with the teleconverter on, shooting between two and 300, quite often. So it was the perfect lens up there. I found myself wishing that teleconverter that was rumored a long time ago, and I haven't heard anything about it, so I don't even know if it's still in the works or not. But the teleconverter that goes basically 0, 1.4 to 2x, I was kind of wishing I had that, because I would never have had to take that lens off the camera. But I did. I did shoot a couple times with the 2x on it, and I'm glad that I did. Some of the stuff up on the tundra, some of my favorite shots from the trip actually were at 600 millimeters and still able to get wide in the frame. So small in the frame. Sorry, bears would be out or crossing an area where all of a sudden, hey, they're crossing a bunch of fireweed, and just get a little bit of color, plus have the great backdrops that are everywhere in Alaska. But they were far enough out that even at 600, you're getting small in the frame shots and very detailed shots with great color and just compositions that you would just dream of. And there were bears everywhere, so you could turn and get those shots all the time, because there was bears just kind of traveling back and forth, or there'd be there was a pair of siblings that were sparring all the time. We were able to get some of them as well, and it was the perfect tool. And as much walking as we did, it was super lightweight by comparison. When you look at the old EF glass, or Mark, when you think about the old Nikon glass and the metal bodies, that are a lot heavier to pack around, and what you can shoot with now, it was the perfect tool, in my opinion. And thanks, Colin, for getting a hold of those for us so that we could take them up there and put them through the paces.
So if you have questions about the 1 to 500, Colin at Pictureline is the guy to contact and ask about it.
And the 1 to 3 too.
Yeah,
That's
1 to
what I
3 as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the 1 to 5. I was thinking, one of the questions I had for you guys today is, when you do a trip, people wonder about gear. We get that all the time. Emails come in. What cameras should they bring? Here's their kit. What's the ideal telephoto, zoom, or wide angle? Now, you guys have done this with this most modern equipment. If you were to go back again, for listeners contemplating a trip like this, what would your, and Ron, you just said it, I think the 1 to 3 would be the primary, it's not a prime, but your most important lens that you would take for the applications?
Yeah. And I was a bonehead. We were up on this bluff shooting down on this bunch of salmon, and then the bears would go fish or swim amongst the fish. And a I borrowed a polarizer that did not fit my lens, so I was holding it in front of my lens because I didn't have a step down ring or a step up ring. And I got back to camp and I had my polarizer, and it's a high dollar, Stingray polarizer. I had it in my pack, and I just didn't take it out the day we went to the bluff. And it would have fit just fine. I wouldn't have had to hold anything on the end of my lens.
Well, you know what, Ron? Some of us didn't even bring a polarizer and had to borrow somebody else's. So,
Well, yeah, I had to borrow one too. So
yeah,
it just, yeah.
yeah. That's
So
sorry.
take
Go
a
ahead.
polarizer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is a really good pro tip. Absolutely. I would have. I don't know why I never thought about it honestly. And then we got there, and people were, like quite a few people had them, and I was like, why wasn't I thinking about that? It's just so dumb. But yeah, totally. If you go to shoot fish and bears at all, take a polarizer. It does make a difference. So,
And going back, Mark, to the 1 to 3, it is perfect. But one of the things that I think maybe they kind of missed the boat on was they do not have a drop in filter system like they do on all the big primes and even the 200 to 400 with Canon. And so if you're going to get I got an ND filter, but it's 112 millimeter thread, and I did not get a polarizer. Also, it's a gigantic screw-on ND filter, so that I didn't have to carry a matte box around with me. But um, that is a consideration with that lens, is that you don't have the same filter options that you had with all your old EF glass. There is no drop in, and part of it is weather sealing, I think, but part of it is just they saved a little bit of money in engineering.
Was there a lot of challenging low light? Was that a benefit of the 2.8, or was it not a big deal that with the open landscape lighting was strong enough that the 1 to 5 would have been okay too?
I think so, and I think a lot of guys use the 1 to 5. While we were up there, a lot of people did.
Hmm.
We had tremendous light the whole time. There were a couple times where it did get overcast and slow your shutter speed down a bit, but we had fantastic light.
to that point, I mean, I was quite often, most of the time, because we had light, I was shooting at f8, and when I could, because I was trying to get more of the bear and the fish in focus, right? So it's nice to have that 2.8 if you need it, but most of the time we were not shooting wide open. We were, at least for me, I was shooting at f8, f9. I even tried shooting at f13 at one point.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have the light to be able to do that too. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I found myself more often, um, because there were several sows with cubs, and then there were multiple bears in a couple locations, and to get everything in focus, you had to shoot, at least f8, if not, f13
right.
or 16. So I found myself shooting with a little bit more depth of field rather than shooting tight and going for that bokeh. I did that when we did have a couple chances to photograph ptarmigan and shot wide open, of course, on the birds, but the bears, I've just because of the proximity and the number of bears that were there, found myself shooting with a little bit more depth of field.
And ptarmigan really do exist up there. I saw them.
Yeah, we do have.
We
There
got
are
photos.
ptarmigan in Alaska for sure.
Hoping to put that myth to bed here next week.
Did Did you guys see any other species besides like any wolf or fox on this trip, or bears the big highlight?
Bears were the highlight. When we got to King Salmon, before we flew out to camp, there was a fox right in town, a red fox that we were able to photograph. And then one morning, actually, got up, there were ptarmigan squawking all over the ridge all around camp, and then there were some right on the flats right outside of the fence, and there was a red fox that came in right to camp, and it was dark, so no images were taken. I don't know if I even got any video with my phone, but there was a red fox, and then we did see wolf tracks. I never did see a wolf, but I know that they were there. Other people had seen them. You know, right where we went down the hill to do the river crossing every day. Um, there was a wolf that had been viewed and photographed by some other guys that were up there.
Yeah, we were
And
hoping to run into that wolf for sure. There was those
mm,
tracks were fresh the first day we saw them, and we came across them. And I was like, that's those are too big to be coyote or fox or anything. That's got to be a wolf. And then the next day we heard that they had seen one up
mm,
higher and that and down at the confluence. And yeah, it was we were really hoping to run into that wolf. That'd have been cool, but
yeah,
didn't happen. But
somebody got it. Good for them, but it
right,
wasn't us.
no, it was not us. But Scott said that was the first time he'd seen a red fox there. You know, so
Oh,
that's
really?
kind of yeah. That's I mean, they got to be around. Obviously, we saw one and we know they're around, but I guess they're not super common to actually see. But
Oh, we did though. Um, did have a fox spotted when we were on the river, and he was just booking it, running across this ridge. It was a cross fox, and he was just hauling butt.
oh, that's
You
right.
know,
Yeah, like day two or something, if I remember
yeah,
right. Yeah, I was
yep.
way up the ridge. That's right. But
Keith, I think.
Keith spotted it. Yep.
No, Keith photographed it.
Oh, that's
That
right. He
thing
did.
was
It's
about
like a little
1 pixel,
right, little black pepper spot.
but he did document it. So there's evidence.
Yeah, and
Well,
Amy was with us on this trip, and it was those river crossings were a little sketchy for her. I mean, I'm not going to make any short jokes or anything, but you know, there's some challenges there because the water was pretty high. So
Well, okay, and here's another pro tip. Because of that, make sure you take either waterproof backpack or water resistant backpack
mm-hmm.
or a dry bag. And Brian, I think, the first day he had just an over the shoulder bag. And the first time we did the river crossing, it was tough for him to balance because he had to hold everything so high,
Right.
because he had that over the shoulder bag that hung pretty low to the water, and so it had to kind of break current for him because it was tough to maintain balance with your arms up, you know, not being able to use a walking stick or anything when he did those river crossings. So I had an extra dry bag and that he was able to use as a backpack, and I think it helped him out a bit um, the rest of the time. But the river also did subside. That first day was a little sketchy.
Yeah, really strong current, and I was deeper than I remembered it being. It was when we started crossing. I was surprised. It was probably right, you know, between the waist and the top of the waders. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
up there. And then having a hiking stick too, and that's you know we alluded to it, but that hiking stick was priceless for that stuff to be able to keep your balance and that current. It's crazy how strong it was, and you really had to kind of lean into it as you're crossing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So make sure you had good footing, but all doable. It wasn't crazy. Everybody kind of linked up, like Ron said, and we all made it across no problem. But there was a couple of slips and close calls and stuff. So it just made for a miserable rest of the day if you got all wet, you know. So, but camp was nice too. They had made some improvements. You know, there was the outhouse obviously for your needs there, and the food options were better this time around. I think Just from my previous experience, there was a lot of different options for the freeze dried meals and that, so there was some variety that way. And those little things made a big difference. And then the big tent was a lot more cozy and roomy, as far as our ability to all be in the tent together, eating breakfast and dinner and stuff. And you did say it, Mark, but we did not come back for lunch. We were out all day, so we would leave in the morning, get up in the morning, eat our breakfast, leave, and come back for dinner, and just be gone and out all day. Nobody wanted to come back. Everybody wanted to put as much time out there as we could, and the light, we just worked with us all day. Even like middle of the day, we'd get a little bit of that, filtered light with a little bit of cloud cover from time to time. And, it just was another one of those trips where the weather really cooperated.
So looking back on the week, each of you, what would your favorite moment be from this trip, experience, photographic opportunity?
Well, from the bear piece of it, uh, I we split, the group split, and Jason and several stayed on the gravel bar, and I went with Keith Douglas and Amy Harris, and we went with Scott up the river because Amy wanted to photograph these cubs, and I kept giving her a hard time about it the entire week. But hey, we're here to photograph fishing bears, not baby bears, you know. But um, at the same time, photographing something different was good also, and I'm glad that I did go because I got probably my favorite, fishing run shot, which was that one that kind of came close to what Jason had envisioned. And then she had two cubs of the year, two koi that were out with her, and they stayed pretty close. And at one point, there was a boar that kind of encroached. It didn't make a run at him, but it was getting closer, and it wasn't slowing down at all. Um, and the cubs got nervous and took off running. And both of them were playing in the water, having a great time. And then they took off and ran right straight at where we were sitting. One ended up sitting down. I hesitate to say it, but we just didn't move because you don't want to in a situation like that. It's a little tense. But the cub was about 10 feet.
Hmm.
And just, full frame cub of the year shots you don't have the opportunity to get,
Hmm.
especially at 100 millimeters.
Hmm.
Um, but I did have a cub sit down about 10 feet from me and got some pretty cool shots of that. And then I just the ensuing, not chaos. Mom was pretty calm when she came over and gathered him back up, but the cubs were calling the whole time. They were pretty vocal, and it was kind of fun, enjoyable. Keith asked me at one point. He says, "Didn't you get nervous because I just kept shooting the whole way through the whole scenario?" And I said, "Well, it was it was going to happen whether I was nervous or not. So you just keep going." And there was another situation where I was filming with my we crossed the creek, and I was filming with my cell phone. I just turned around. I was the last one in line. Turned around, was filming with my cell phone, and all of a sudden, this group of fish kind of made a run, like a few feet in front of me. And one of the things that Scott had said is just if they make a run at you, they're not running at you; they're running at the fish. So just hold still, don't don't move, don't startle the bear, and they'll do their thing, and then they're going to go on about their business. Well, it was close. It was really, really close. I mean, within a couple meters, and I just kept filming, and I had it zoomed in, but because it was almost all the way across the creek, and then all of a sudden these fish ran, and that noise kind of triggers them, the noise of the fish cutting through the current, um, and that's when it made the run in my direction. And so I was zoomed in a little tight, even with my phone, So I had to zoom back out a little bit, and I may have expressed my surprise verbally. Yeah, it was pretty awesome, and Scott didn't really say much about it because I just held still and didn't move. But he did say, "Well, I think Ron got it," because it was right there. But those two encounters were pretty amazing. Just get your
Yeah.
heart going a little bit.
That's funny, Ron. Mine are similar. I didn't go on that walkabout with you guys, obviously, and I think it's awesome that you guys had that happen. That's you were going to get the Cubs, you got the Cubs, and then to have that crazy, experience happen is awesome. When I think mine was when you guys were on your walkabout and we were focused on the bears running down the pipe at us, and we
Yeah,
had a one of the smaller bears, the teenage bears. He was chasing a fish and it just kept coming, kept coming, kept coming. It was the same kind of thing. And you're laying on the sandbar, so you're pretty vulnerable, right? And he just kept coming, and he ended up to where I was at 100 or 140, I guess, because I had the TC on there, and I couldn't even get him in frame. And I looked out of the viewfinder, and he was probably about a couple meters away, like you said, and wasn't nervous about us. Didn't was no threat to us at all. But it's something special about being that close to those bears. It's hard to explain, knowing that you're in their zone at their terms, and they're comfortable with you. It's just, I don't know. There's something that's hard to explain, but it's something special about that. It gets the adrenaline going. It gets, it just, I don't know, imprints on your mind really strongly. For me, it does, anyways. And on that sandbar, we had quite a few bears that came pretty close to us, and I think for the folks that had never been there before, it was quite the nerve-wracking experience, I'm sure. But even, I've only been there twice. I'm not acting like I'm some veteran or anything, but even being there the second time, knowing that it's coming, it still gets your heart pumping. It's just when they're that close to you. And anyways, so that was, I don't think I had any specific photographic experience. It was more just that one day where we stayed put the entire day and tried to get just those bears running down the pipe was probably my favorite. And I appreciate that, there's folks that wanted to do that, and we were able to just kind of split up and, go whatever direction you wanted to go with it. So that was kind of nice. But yeah, it's hard to explain to people. I show people at work and talk to other people about it, and they're just baffled. Like, how can you even be that close and, not be petrified? And it's just a lack of understanding from people that those bears aren't there for you. They don't look at you as food. They don't look at you as a threat. They don't, even though they can eat you. And it's not like you just need to be stupid. You got to be real careful and cautious still and behave properly. Like Ron said, no quick movements, just hold your ground. Don't panic. Don't freak out. They can sense your emotions, right? If you start getting in panic mode, then they start getting in panic mode. And so, but yeah, anyways, easier said than done sometimes when they're, a few feet from you. So
Not your average day, right? That's why it'll stick forever, those memories. The power of the presence
yeah,
of these animals. And that's pretty amazing. Well, that's a
yeah,
thrill that you guys had such a productive trip. Is there a highlight moment on the fun side, or about camp life? Because that's a different experience for those days. No,
yeah. For
nobody
me,
replies. Sorry.
no, it was for me. For me, it was. I mean, it's seriously, and you know how it is when you're hanging out with your buds and you got people that and having Ron there was always obviously fun. And we've been on a couple trips before together, but I know this one was different. And we were having fun and just teasing each other a little bit, and then that whole rainbow thing. That was actually, I know it sounds dumb, but I taking those photos was pretty fun. It was just the so spur of the moment, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody expected it to turn out that way, but we had fun. I'm sure JJ will share the photo. I think he has it, so I don't care if he shares it. Whatever. We were just having fun. So, but yeah, quite the camp life was fun. We didn't spend a lot of time in camp, honestly. The accommodations were pretty comfortable. I mean, for what you're in, you're sleeping on the ground in a tent on a pad. But for given the circumstances, it's pretty comfortable, really. May not be for some people, but
Bags
just
and
know what you're
everything.
getting into. You are sleeping on the ground in a tent on a pad, So, what'd you say, Mark?
Oh, they provide the sleeping bags and everything for the guests. Is that? Do I remember that accurately?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything was there and ready when we got there. Yeah, I think for me it was honestly, I knew everybody that was going to be there, with a couple exceptions. There was a guy from the Czech Republic, Vladimir, and Laxo from Slovenia, and he was hilarious. I'm not kidding. He was full on camp entertainment every night, telling stories and just the life that those guys live. Vladimir, actually, I got to know. I was introduced to by another friend from Alberta, and that's how they ended up on the camp on the trip. And he is from the Czech Republic. He's a veterinarian. Actually, they're both veterinarians. Wildlife veterinarian. Loxa was a wildlife veterinarian, and then Vladimir is just a general. But he likes being a cowboy, and so he has American quarter horses over in the Czech Republic. They go out and rodeo all the time in the Czech Republic, and some of the stories that they were telling about taking horseback trips. Oh, so funny. But those guys were fun. But um, one of my really good friends from just down the road, Jeremy Thies, was able to go with us on this trip too. And honestly, just watching those guys fly in and seeing the smile on Jeremy's face, and when he got out of the plane, and just being able to spend time with him out there as well, it was fun. I mean, there were times where you just kind of take it for granted. It's just like we're out shooting here because we do shoot a lot together. Um, but then you think, holy cow, yeah, we made it to Alaska together too. Hillbillies from Wyoming up in got up to Alaska, and we're able to have a good photographic trip together and just enjoy some time in the wilds of Alaska. And it didn't honestly feel that wild. We were very remote, but the number of planes was just crazy to me. There was one time where I was talking to Scott. I'm like, they're about 2 flights a day from needing air traffic control up here. And watching those guys, so there'd be an otter at the end of the lake that we were staying close to, getting ready to take off, and then there'd be another beaver come fly right over the top of him, land, and then the otter would take off as soon as the beaver got to the bank. It was nuts. And there wasn't any time during the day where you couldn't hear an aircraft. And it was kind of disheartening because you go up there for a nice wild camp experience, and to have it be that busy, again, goes back to that loving places to death kind of thing. Yeah. But one thing that I was going to say for a pro tip, actually, two things that I was going to say for a pro tip is, and I think we all do it, um, is what I said when we started, but it's kind of subconscious, and I think it's a good tip for people is when you're getting animals in motion, especially bears, especially those brown bears because they've got the really long claws, is just as they move and you're taking shots in motion, waiting for that joint to fully articulate. So you have the elbow bend, you have the bend in the wrist, and their bears when they walk, even polar bears, brown bears, it doesn't matter. They rotate their front wrist in a little bit, and just waiting for those moments before you start spraying and praying because you get those nice elongated claws with the brown bears. You get the fully articulated joint, and a lot of times, especially with the bigger bears, there'll also be a bend in the body one way or the other as they walk. and it just makes for a lot more intriguing photo as I'm kind of looking back. And then, also the opportunities to, not often do you get opportunities of bears walking right at you, as Jason was saying, coming right down the pipe. But whether they're running or walking, taking those straight on shots, and even then though, waiting for those joints to articulate, so you're not just taking a portrait, you can actually see the motion in every bend of every joint in their arm or leg. So that, I think, save your shots for those moments when there is some motion being seen by the bending of the joints.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's one thing I've tried to do more of, and I was definitely trying to do it on that trip, is when I'm taking my shots, instead of just holding the shutter down when something crazy is going on, I really try to do shorter bursts. And what I'm doing is I'm giving my camera a better chance to refocus and re-grab what I'm really trying to focus on. And I've noticed sometimes when I'm just spraying and praying and holding that down, sometimes I lose focus on what I really want during that episode. And when
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing like 3 to 5, shot bursts just real quick, I feel like I have a better chance of not having that happen. So it's a double edged sword. I get it. You're trying to balance, you're trying to catch the right moment, but trying to time those bursts with the right motion of those joints, like Ron mentioned, and then doing it in short bursts so that you're making sure you're getting the focus where you want it. It's a lot to think about in the moment, but training yourself to think that way, I think, helps you get more keepers of like the really dramatic stuff. But just food for thought. But
And less culling.
less culling, which is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to love the mirrorless technology for that focus ability, but yeah, the volume of images is a clear trade-off. But the results, with time wading through them, you get it right, and that's something for people out there. I mean, not everybody's able to switch to mirrorless, but we've had a lot of conversations on the tours this year with people who haven't, and it's something to consider because for the money and time spent on adventures like the one that Ron and Jason have talked about tonight, it can make a big difference for autofocus, and what you see is what you get, and the capabilities of the new technologies. Pretty sweet stuff, but obviously not enough to make you not do the trip if you have a DSLR. The point is making the memories and getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
The camp questions, I mean, the big part of these trips is the shared experiences and the friendships that are made and the memories that are shared that you guys get to revisit, anytime you're hanging out. So it's magical
Yeah.
stuff, truly, to go on trips
Mm-hmm.
with friends. And then, of course, like you said, you meet new people and make new friends. That's an amazing part of wildlife photography. Our community, so many like-minded people, and a lot of fun to be had in the field, making memories, and the best places in the field. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
glad I'm glad to hear you guys had such a great trip. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I have a couple of pro tips just because you brought it up at the beginning to throw out there, but
You
um,
bet.
Yeah.
okay.
Real quick. Sorry. Yeah. Just and we kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I did really enjoy that whole like having breakfast and dinner around in a circle in the tent, yucking it up about the day and what's coming, and just talking about world events and whatever. You really get to know each other more, and the people you share these trips with, you get to know them better, and it's a lot of fun. That was a really fun part of the trip to me. I enjoy that socializing and getting to know people better. So yeah, can't undersell that enough. That's a really really fun part of the trip for me. But
Yeah. Brian was another highlight of the trip because
yeah,
everything was new for him.
yeah,
And he's from down south, law enforcement officer from down south, and great guy. Had a blast with him.
yep,
But just kind of to watch the excitement, and that's why we all do these trips. Just watch the excitement of somebody seeing something for the first time or experiencing something for the first time, and by the end he was a pro. But he was excited. It was like Christmas morning, I think it looked like, and that's why we do it. That's why we put these trips together and try to get other folks up in the field with us, and that was fun.
Yep.
So I got to hear the caribou pro tip though, Mark.
And that, you know what, I agree with you wholeheartedly. When people see something for the first time in the field, and caribou are a good example, or any of these trips are, honestly. It's exciting, and there's that first out of the gate and taking lots of pictures of that first encounter. But I love how as the days go on, you hope for. I mean, that's magical enough. It truly is. But there are times that elements come together and make for an exceptional experience, both visually, life experience, and photographically. And I get a thrill out of when that ramps up. Magical light or behavior interactions that we have the opportunity to record or photograph I love sharing that and taking it to the next level, because the animation and the storytelling after is so rewarding and memorable. And those events, I often, what I see too is, and I take time in the field, we'll just stop for 20 minutes and take the scene in afterwards, because you kind of have to let the dust settle on how rich that experience was, and share that. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
something that, as with this trip, you'll be able to share stories for a lifetime afterwards, and that's pretty amazing stuff. The caribou. This is a funny one. It came to me when I was brainstorming when you mentioned it earlier. The ground is often dry, not always, but often dry on the tundra, and so when animals lay down and take a rest, it's a great landscape, whether it's Newfoundland or Alaska or wherever it is, to lay down. It's so rich in vegetation and comfortable. But sometimes it's wet. And Tom and Haley, a wonderful couple that joined us on Caribou during one of our weeks this year, had these in their packs. So Pilly's ordered one, and it weighs nothing. And I mean, I'm sure there are many brands. This is a Thermarest one, but it folds up on itself and then makes a backside sized cushion that's insulated and waterproof that you can pop down. So if your subjects are sleeping, and it could be 20 minutes, it could be 3 hours, you have a way to stay dry. And so she's bought one of these, and we've talked about getting enough for all of our guests to have for the week, but it's something to keep in mind for trips like this, because honestly, it's featherweight and just fits in your pack. And if you do decide to sit down and have a powwow or a lunch or a snack, then you can stay dry if it's wet, unless you're wearing rain pants and stuff like that too. But that's a whole other discussion. So that was something that came out of Caribou this year. Another little thing that came out for me, as far as memory cards, got full, and I ordered some more. And over the 3 years since I bought Mirrorless, the same memory cards are now faster. And I didn't realize this until I went to order more. The price is far less than they were. And brand, obviously, shopping around, they're probably all comparable on speeds. But the new CFB Express card that I ordered this week, is the download rate is faster than the ones when I first bought the camera 3 years ago. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
bonus as well too. So that was news to me. But all the talk of this trip, and the remoteness, the float planes experience, is amazing. And you hope for good weather. You guys had it, but all those elements taking you out into the wild, and then bears. I mean, who doesn't love bears, and the opportunity to learn about bears and photograph bears and to be in their company is incredible. So it's been wonderful to hear about how your week went, and I can't wait to see the photos when I watch it on YouTube, when JG releases it for us, and the videos. That'll be fun to put the visuals to the stories too. So thanks for sharing it. Great to hear. So we are actually going to have another podcast recording tomorrow. Not that it'll mean anything to you guys listening, but we're trying to get caught up in our recording bank here to keep things going, because we want to have something for you every week whenever possible. And looking forward to telling the story of our first ever remote muskox trip this year. That's something we're going to record soon. And yeah, lots more coming. So thank you to Pictureline for sponsoring our podcast to keep the fun rolling. And obviously, if you're looking for anything camera related, photography related, please reach out to Colin at Pictureline. Let him know you've come from Beyond the Wild podcast. Obviously, they've got some stickers they'll throw in if something you purchase, and we appreciate the support because it directly supports us as far as obviously sales and revenue coming to them through the podcast. On an exciting note, too, Ron has a great hat on tonight. This is not from the merch site is going, right? Beyond the Wild swag of various sorts is available, and it's much appreciated. Only the big heart feeling. If you're interested in a hat, in a tumbler for your coffee or water or sweater, I mean, it means so much to think that you enjoy the show enough that you want that out there. And so it's now available. The podcast continues to evolve, and we're delighted to share that with all of you and to make that available too. And it supports a small business in Ron's hometown. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks to Ron for really making that happen and pushing it, and to JG for linking it to the website and everything. There was a lot of work that went into that. So you guys, thank you very much. And it's, I stand corrected. I think on the last one that just listened to, I said, I'll believe it when I see it. And I caught myself as the way the podcast ended, which was very negative of me, by the way, which I'm not that way generally, but it's awesome. It's here, guys. It's live. So
yeah, finally. So, but yeah, Jean does a great job, and her and her husband would be happy to get a hoodie or a toque or a ball cap, whatever the case may be. They'd be happy to get it out
toque
to you.
Season. Yep.
Almost there.
Wonderful fall out there, full of adventure, full of success and stories to be told. Thank you for tuning in for another week of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'll be back with you again soon.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA.